everyone, we have a lot to cover in this video. I will be completing my pay-per-view reviews of the 2000 events for the WWF. But before I get into that, I've got a couple of things to cover. I do want to do a preview of AEW's Double or Nothing 2022, which is happening this weekend, this Saturday, in fact. I will not be able to watch it because I have a lot of prior commitments getting in the way, but I will try to watch it at some point this weekend. We do have the holiday this weekend, which definitely helps, and will give me a little bit of extra time to check it out, the show, but I do want to get a preview out there just to give my feelings on current AEW programming. One other quick thing before I jump into that, though, Batman the Animated Series, I have refilmed part 1 of my episode review series, and it turned out much better than the first one, so I have to do some editing and things like that, but overall, that one, I was much happier with how this one came out as opposed to the other one, so we're on a better standing now with the Batman video, so that'll be coming out sometime soon, hopefully sometime in June, but it's been filmed and it's just some slight editing and it should be good to go. And hopefully this will be the preferred format for the series moving forward as I produce more of these Batman videos. But with that said, let's jump into AEW Double or Nothing 2022, a big event for AEW considering it's their 3-year anniversary, which was tonight. I'm filming this right after AEW Dynamite, and Double or Nothing was the first event for AEW. A lot has changed since then. Cody Rhodes was having the best match of the night on that show, and now he's not even in AEW anymore. Strange times, weird things happen, but Double or Nothing, this card in particular, it's kind of a mess. I'm not going to lie, the show is very messy in terms of its build-up. There's things that could or should be good, but the build-up hasn't lent itself to it hasn't lent itself to building as much anticipation as one would hope. Looking at this entire card, it's not that it's loaded with bad matches or anything, but there's really only one match that I want to see, and it's entirely because of how good the storyline's been and how good the build-up's been. So the rest of the card, I can kind of take it or leave it, which is pretty inexcusable for AEW considering that, you know, they only have 4 pay-per-view events a year. Well, 5 this year because of the New Japan event happening with Forbidden Door. But it's, I don't know. It's like when you have that much time in between pay-per-views, I would hope that you would have a nice, solid, well-built card heading into each event. And that's not what we got here. It's just kind of, a lot of it feels slapped together. And I don't know if the acquisition of ROH, the announcement of the New Japan show, and the Owen Hart tournaments, doing 2 simultaneous tournaments at once, kind of threw a bunch of things out of whack. I don't know, because now they have a bunch of new championships introduced with the Ring of Honor belts, which they really need to figure that out, because there's too many belts. It's too many. And Tony said in a recent interview that he's got like 9 belts that he hasn't even introduced yet. It's like, nah, stop it. Just stop. No more belts. Just stop with the belts. Start unifying some shit. Or either make Ring of Honor a separate entity. You know, I'm thinking, give it, you know, you've got 2 YouTube shows, just make one of the YouTube shows Ring of Honor. And, you know, or if you're not going to do that, just start unifying some belts, because there's just too many belts floating around. But I don't know. I think with all that going on, like, just the storylines just haven't been as good as they should be. And I will elaborate as I go into the entirety of the card. And I guess I'll start with the pre-show match, Hookhausen versus Tony Nese and Mark Sterling, Smart Mark Sterling. This is probably the most excited I've ever been for a pre-show match. It feels like they put more thought into Hookhausen, the Hook Danhausen pairing, than they have literally almost anything else on this card, which is kind of amazing to me. Part of me wishes this was actually on the main card, because the main card just isn't doing it for me, but as is, I think this will be a fun attraction. It'll pop the crowd. Hook is getting mad over. Like, you want to talk about a guy that's just an original that's just naturally gotten over with the audience. I mean, Hook is that right now, and he's fun to watch. And you've got Danhausen, who's a goofy character that's fun to watch. So I expect this match to be fun, and Hookhausen better win. I know Danhausen lost his first match in like 30 seconds, but like, Hook and Danhausen absolutely need to win this match. And I think it'll be a nice little feel-good match to start things off with. But now we move into the main card where we start to see some problems. Where should I start with this thing? Let's go into the trios match. So we've got the House of Black taking on the Death Triangle. So it's Malachi Black, Buddy Matthews, and Brody King taking on Pac. What are they calling him now? Pento Oscuro. I just call him Pentagon Jr. I haven't adapted to any other name that they've given him. And Rey Fenix, who was miraculously able to work again somehow, some way. After that spot he took from Luchasaurus, I thought that might be the end of his career. But on paper, this match should be really good. The problem is that the feud itself has been kind of a mess, and it's just two creepy factions doing run-ins on each other, and that's pretty much the extent of it. There hasn't been anything that interesting that went into it. There was the Julia Hart potential heel turn that kind of went over like a wet fart, and they haven't referenced it since. They backtracked on that, so who knows what's going on there, but I feel like this is a situation where it could, and talking about how the build-up to make things feel more important, this is a situation that probably could have been AEW's equivalent of when WWE did the Wyatt family versus The Shield. One of the last times I remember feeling like when WWE booked a match, and I was like, I'm watching that. I'm like, whatever, what show? And I think it was the February pay-per-view that year, and I'm like, all right, I'm in. I'm paying for it because I want to see that match. And that doesn't happen often in WWE, but here I feel like you could have had a similar situation, but the stables themselves are so like haphazardly promoted that neither one of them really feels like a big deal. At this point, I think there's a lot of talent in there. You look at Malachi Black, you look at Pentagon and Rey Fenix and Pac. I mean, there's a lot of really good talent in there. And this could be a really good match, but these don't feel like two top factions in AEW. This just feels like a standard mid-card match that's probably going to open up the main card, if I had to guess. But we shall see. I'll pick the House of Black to win since they're the more protected of the two. But again, we'll see how it goes. Might be a bit of a sleeper hit on the show. But with the build-up, this deserved a better build-up is basically what I'm saying. And as is, it just kind of feels like something that they're slapping onto the card. Then we have the TBS Championship being defended as Jade Cargill is defending against Anna Jay. I think Jade Cargill is an attraction. I think they've developed her into something that's like a worthy attraction. She looks like a superstar. This feud, it feels like they're just throwing a match on here just to have Jade Cargill on the card, and there wasn't much thought put into it beyond that. I like Anna Jay, but she's not going to win the belt here. This feels like Jade's just going to kill a bitch, and that's it. And it will probably be filler, if I had to guess. I don't expect this to be one of the highlights of the show. This will just be a filler match with Jade Cargill getting an easy win. I get it, you want to showcase your stars, but they didn't craft a very interesting scenario here for their champion or the title that's being defended or the challenger. It just feels like something that they threw on there. But so that honestly, this should be on the pre-show over the Hookhausen match, to be perfectly honest. But then we've got what else is next? I guess we can go into the Owen Hart Tournament Finals because I've got a lot to say about that. The men's finals is no surprise to me. It's Samoa Joe versus Adam Cole. Should be a fine match. Joe, I've made it clear that I think he's lost a step or two and he's not quite what he used to be, but he did have a good match with O'Reilly this week, so maybe him and Adam Cole can have a really good match here. I would expect Adam Cole to get the win here, possibly through outside interference because of Joe's situation with Jay Lethal, Sanjay Dutt, and that big-ass guy whose name Satnam Singh. That whole situation. So I would expect Adam Cole to get the win here and set himself up to be possibly the next challenger for the world title, depending on how that match goes. More on that later. And then for the women, we've got Britt Baker taking on either Ruby Soho or Chris Statlander. Now, I felt like the finals to this tournament should have been Britt versus Toni Storm, which happened on Dynamite. Unfortunately, that match was a flipping disaster. I mean, you want to see a match with two opponents who are completely out of sync with each other. Watch that match. It was unbelievable. And I don't know if there was just miscommunications. I don't know if they were disagreeing with each other. Toni looked like, I don't know if she got kicked in the head or something, because she looked like she was moving in slow motion the whole time. Something was off in that match, and I don't know what happened. A match that I felt probably should have been the finals of the tournament. It ended up being a disaster. So right now you have Britt Baker, who's the star, and she's going up against either Ruby Soho, who quite honestly I don't like, and Chris Statlander, who I only kind of like. And it would feel weird for either one of them to beat Britt Baker, but I think that's probably what's going to happen here, just to shock us. And probably through some kind of interference through Toni Storm to kind of keep the Britt and Toni Storm feud going. Although after that match they had on Wednesday, they probably should scrap that and move on from this pairing. I don't know how much they have planned in advance with this feud, but it's that match did not give me the warm fuzzies about possibly seeing Britt Baker and Toni Storm again. But who knows? Maybe the next time they'll redeem themselves. But whoever wins their match on Rampage is probably going to win the tournament because... possibly because of interference from Toni Storm. That's going to be my pick. And then moving right along, we've got a few other championship matches. We've got Thunder Rosa defending the AEW Women's title against Serena Deeb. Again, this is another match that should feel good. It should feel like a big deal. I like both girls. I like Serena Deeb a lot. I think she was massively underrated during her run in WWE, something she alluded to in her promo last week. But, again, the storyline, the build-up has been kind of haphazard. Nothing of intrigue happened. It just feels like they're doing the match just to have the title on the show. And, again, maybe this will be a sleeper hit. Maybe both women will go out there and have a really good match. But I don't think the creative really helped them get to where they need to be to have, like, a really good potential, pay-per-view worthy championship match. So it's going to have to be... it's a situation I've talked about with WWE a lot, where the women are going to have to go out there and make lemonade out of lemons because they weren't given all that much. I think Thunder Rosa is going to win. I would consider possibly switching to Serena Deeb and trying to give her a run just to see if they can do it and see what she's capable of. But I think Thunder Rosa is going to win. Then we have the Tag Team Championship match, another match that could potentially open the show. Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus of the Jurassic Express taking on Team Taz, Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs, and Keith Lee and Isaiah Swerve Strickland. This is going to be a complete car wreck. It's going to be the action-packed spot fest of the show. That's exactly what it's going to be. There won't be much to it other than that. It's kind of cool that all three teams kind of have like a smaller athletic guy and then a hoss. So you got Luchasaurus in there, you got Keith Lee in there, and you got Powerhouse Hobbs in there. So that should be fun. I think there'll be nice, cross-breeding of talents and different styles clashing and all sorts of things like that. But it's going to be a complete pinball spot festy type of match. So if you like that, great. Personally, to me, it's a thing where I watch it and then I instantly forget about it. It has no substance, at least for me. I don't think there'll be a title change here. I just don't see it. I think it's more likely that like FTR, Red Dragon, and the Bucks are going to wind up getting those belts at some point, and Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus are just holding it until one of those three teams gets it. But as is, I think the match will be it'll be exactly what I said it'll be, and Jurassic Express will most likely retain. Then we have the Dream Tag Team match that I've already seen because I was watching Ring of Honor at the time. The Hardys versus the Young Bucks. These two teams had a spectacular ladder match during the Ring of Honor, Supercard of Honor WrestleMania weekend show, the same WrestleMania where the Hardys made their return to WWF and had another ladder match on WrestleMania. So they were busy that weekend. I thought the match they had the night before, though, at Ring of Honor was very, very good. That's probably as good as you're going to get out of these two teams because I've seen what Jeff Hardy looks like now, and it looks like the years of stunts and falls and all those swanton bombs is finally starting to catch up with him, and he doesn't quite look like the Jeff Hardy of old anymore. He's kind of a sluggishly moving around and just doing his spots, and it looks like his style, his crash style of wrestling has finally caught up to him. Took longer than I would have expected, to be perfectly honest, but yeah, I think the Bucks are going to have their work cut out for him to try and make this match really, really good. I don't think it's going to be an amazing match by any means. Personally, I would have rather seen the Bucks take on Sting and Darby maybe that's just me, but I would have been more excited for that. I mean, I get why they're doing this. The Hardys and the Young Bucks are a marquee match, but again, this feels like something that they just slapped together like 2 weeks ago. This doesn't feel like a big match they've been building up for weeks and weeks and weeks. This just feels like something. It's like, oh hey, let's do the Hardys and the Bucks. And they're just throwing it onto the pay-per-view card. I think the Bucks should win, personally. That would make the most sense to me. So I'll pick them to win it. Hopefully the Bucks are able to put on their working boots and make something out of this. And hopefully Jeff Hardy doesn't kill himself. And what else do we have? I think we've got... we've got Anarchy in the Arena, which is... I don't know how it's different from Stadium Stampede. Who knows? Not sure. I guess we'll find out once we see how everything plays out. But it's going to be the Jericho Appreciation Society, Chris Jericho, Matt Menard, Angelo Parker, Daniel Garcia, and Jake Hager taking on members of the Blackpool Combat Club, Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley, and Eddie Kingston with his partner Santana and Ortiz. Now, I was actually really confused at first because they... in the promo they did, I think last week, they made it sound like Eddie, Santana, and Ortiz had joined the Blackpool Combat Club, but that's not what happened. So they're just a bunch of people uniting against a common foe. It's like, all right, fair enough. It's going to be a wild free-for-all, one of those type of matches, which could be a lot of fun. I don't know. I'm not really... The Jericho Appreciation Society stuff with Santana Ortiz and Eddie Kingston started off hot, but it's kind of cooled off in recent weeks. And I think it might be a side effect of just having too many bodies involved in this whole feud. And adding the BCC to it is another indicator of that. It's like, oh, great, more people to keep track of. AEW has a lot of stables. I don't know if you know this. They've got a lot of stables, and it gets hard to keep up with who's in what group and whatever. But, yeah... I mean, I guess I'll pick the faces to win just because it feels like Jericho Appreciation Society is kind of dominated the feud, and BCC is still fairly new, and it's got Danielson and Moxley in it, so you'll kind of want to protect them a little bit as being big stars. So yeah, I'm going to pick them to win in what's probably going to be kind of a wild hardcore match, and hopefully it's a lot of fun in the process. Then we've got, I think it's just the two big matches, the two biggies. All right, I'm going to go into the match that I am most excited for. MJF versus Wardlow. If Wardlow wins, he is allowed to sign an AEW contract and he's completely freed from MJF. If Wardlow loses, then he is banned from AEW forever. So, this is basically DiBiase versus Virgil from 91. If Virgil was like Batista or Goldberg, just this brute that could beat the ever-living shit out of people. And Wardlow, the way they've presented him on TV and the way they've handled this story has been near flawless. I think Wardlow has gotten over like Rover. I think he's great. He's probably my favorite guy to watch in AEW right now. I think, I talk about it with Jade Cargill and Hook and certain guys that have been... homegrown original attractions built by AEW. And Wardlow is probably the best example of that, where he started as kind of a generic muscle guy destined to play the bodyguard to the sniveling heel, and he's grown into something far more special. And he's, like I said, he's probably my favorite person to watch on the whole show. And this is the match I'm most excited for. It's the main reason I'm going to check out this show, because I want to see how this match goes. I wouldn't be surprised if they had Wardlow just kill MJF in like 2 minutes or something and get that big pop. But again, we'll see. I would expect... my expectation is that MJF will have some tricks up his sleeves and it'll be a very old school kind of match, but Wardlow will bust through it all and beat MJF. I think Wardlow's going to win this match. I'm pretty confident in that. But overall... by far the best storyline heading into the show, and I want to see Wardlow just powerbomb that little fucker into oblivion, and it's going to be beautiful when it happens, because it's going to be great. I'll be honest, I'm more excited for this match than I was for MJF and Punk, and that's saying something. And then we have the main event. Speaking of CM Punk, he will be challenging Hangman Adam Page for the AEW World Championship. It feels like they did this match because they had to have fun. Again, something done out of obligation. They had to have Hangman face somebody. And Punk got a big win at the last pay-per-view, and he's obviously a big name, so it just made sense to do it. There's not necessarily a huge storyline attached to this. The promo on tonight's show was solid overall. I still don't know why Hangman hates Punk so much. It's implied because he's like an outsider coming in, and he doesn't like Punk's whole personality or anything, but it's just like the level of animosity that he has seems somewhat unwarranted because they've just barely been feuding with each other. But in any case, I think this could be a very good match. I just don't, again, the storyline hasn't really grabbed me all that much. It's just feels like it's like, ooh, we're doing CM Punk in the main event, and that's the main attraction for doing this whole thing. But I think the match could be very good, and I will say this. I honestly don't know who's going to win this thing. This is an extremely tough call, and that's a good thing. I'll give them that. It's like I legitimately don't know who's going to win this thing. My gut says Punk, so I'm going to pick Punk. I'm going to pick a title change here, but I could just as easily see Hangman winning this and getting the biggest win of his career since his victory over Omega. But we shall see. So that is AEW Double or Nothing. Again, I don't think it's the worst card I've ever seen, but creatively they haven't done what they've needed to do to really set these things up and make these matches mean as much as they should. And so the card feels very lackluster because of it. Hopefully, I mean, I'm looking at this thing. We've got 10 matches on the main show, which is a lot. So hopefully that means we don't get 3 or 4 half-hour-long matches and they space everything out fairly reasonably and make it more digestible. But we shall see how that all goes. So that's AEW Double or Nothing. I'm going to be checking out the show sometime this weekend. Hopefully it turns out well. And for those of you who are going to check out the show, hopefully you all enjoy it as well. All right, now that that's done, let's go ahead and wrap up the 2000 WWF pay-per-views. We've got 4 more to go from September to December of 2000. When we last left off, I had talked about SummerSlam 2000 and that batshit crazy main event that they had, as well as the TLC match, the history-making TLC match for the Tag Team Championship. And now we're kind of in the fallout phase of that. And we come to the September pay-per-view, Unforgiven. And this is an interesting event because the top selling attraction of this show, which emanated from, where was it? The First Union Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The main attraction of the show was not any particular match. The main event was a fairly uneventful 4-way match. Multi-man main events are usually uneventful, at least for me. But the real attraction was the pay-per-view return of Stone Cold Steve Austin, as he was back in WWE programming, not for a match, but he was going to make his presence known on the pay-per-view, and that added an extra layer of excitement to the event. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and get started with the show. First of all, we got an amazing opening video package, which I referenced in the previous video where I talked about Kamari Vosa's voice actress, who I believe is the one doing the voiceover for that pay-per-view opener. Very good, and another indicator of WWF's great production during this time, which has only continued as the years went on. We opened up the card properly with an 8-man tag team match, the Dudley Boys and the Acolyte Protection Agency, Farouk and Bradshaw, taking on the Right to Censor, members Steven Richards, Bull Buchanan, The Good Father, and Val Venus. And the Right to Censor, I've talked about them briefly, but at this point they had fully embraced the whole, like, the Right to Censor as a cult, basically, and Steven is just brainwashing people into joining him, whether it be the Good Father turning from a pimp into a tie-wearing freak, Val Venus turning from, he'd already ditched the porn star thing, and now he was also a tie-wearing freak that was obsessed with censorship. And the group, to their credit, I mean, they did get heat. I think Ivory probably benefited the most from the group, as she would go on to be a women's champion and get probably the best run of her career out of it. But the problem with the Right to Censor is that yes, they got heat, but it didn't always translate to the matches themselves. This one was okay because you had the Dudleys and the Acolytes basically wailing on them. Right to Censor got the win here, which was somewhat surprising. Looking back on it, it's somewhat surprising. But again, they did get heat, so you want to keep the heels looking strong. So I understand that mindset. Although this was kind of undone by the post-match where the Dudley Boys and the Acolytes beat the ever-living tar out of the Right to Censor and put Steven through a table. So even though the faces lost, they got the last word in the end. Then we get the next match, a strap match and a rematch from SummerSlam. Jerry the King Lawler versus Taz. I wasn't a fan of Taz losing to an announcer. Yes, Jerry Lawler is an all-time great wrestler and a Hall of Famer. I understand that, but at this point in his career, he'd been an announcer for a long time. And it just felt weird that this supposed badass from ECW was losing matches to a commentator, although Taz would eventually transition into being a commentator himself. This match was an opportunity to do two things. One, give Taz his win back because he lost the SummerSlam match. And two, introduce Raven into the WWE as he made his debut here to help Taz get the victory. That sounds cooler than it really was because Raven ultimately went on to do very little except hold the hardcore title 9 million times. Raven was another guy that could have been really good for WWE, but they just never knew what to do with him. And but the debut was pretty cool. I will give it that. That got a nice pop and was nice to see. Thankfully, this would be the last Taz and Jerry Lawler encounter in the year 2000. They would face off again at ECW One Night Stand, where Taz would easily demolish Lawler. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to say about the match. It wrapped up the feud. Taz got his win, and this is probably... Was this the last pay-per-view win of Taz's career? No, he did win at WrestleMania 17, and I think he had a tag team run with Spike Dudley. But, yeah, Taz, they didn't really know what to do with him, and it showed. But, whatever. At least he won this one. And it is at this point that Stone Cold Steve Austin arrives in the building, and throughout the night there are a series of segments showing Austin going backstage interviewing people because he wants to know who ran him over back at Survivor Series 1999. And he's back now, and he's looking for the guy that did it. He starts off by beating up Kevin Kelly. There's a hilarious segment where he meets Kurt Angle for the first time and beats the ever-living tar out of him. Great stuff. And there's also a really funny segment with Stephanie where Austin goes to talk to Triple H, but he's not there. And Stephanie was like, "I'm glad you're here. I have something to give you." And she has the baseball cap that Austin was wearing the night he got run over. And she said, "I'd been holding on to it for a year, hoping and praying that you would turn out okay. And you're back now, so here's your hat back." And it was just kind of like this fake, insincere gesture of goodwill. And it was kind of funny and kind of cute. So it was like, all right, that was funny. But the point is, Austin was back and no one was safe. And he was going around stalking everybody and everything until he would have his big segment in the ring, which I'll elaborate on when we get to that point. Then we have a Hardcore Championship Open featuring Steve Blackman, Al Snow, who's the WWF European Champion at this point. Funny thing about Al Snow is him as European Champion is one of my favorite runs of Al Snow's career because he would come out, because he was the European Champion, he was representing Europe, he would come out in a caricature of a European nation every show, every week. And it was not a very long run, but it was a very fun one. It was like, all right, what country is he going to represent this week? So that was one of my more favorite runs of Al Snow's career. But anyway, it's Steve Blackman, the Hardcore Champion, defending against Al Snow, Crash Holly, Test, Funaki, and Perry Saturn. And it's basically the same match that we got at WrestleMania 2000, but with less people in it. And it's only, I believe it was only 10 minutes instead of 15. And it was a very basic hardcore match, like, again, bodies flying around. It was less convoluted than the WrestleMania one, and it took up less time, which is good. And Terry Runnels is in Perry Saturn's corner, and Trish Stratus was in Test's corner, which added a little bit of intrigue to it, because they be hot. But other than that, wasn't a whole lot going on here. Steve Blackman got the win. They were kind of transitioning past Crash Holly being the Houdini of hardcore at this point, and Steve Blackman had pretty much taken over as the definitive hardcore champion, especially after his match with Shane. And this was, it was what it was. Just one of those, pure filler. Next up, we get the unique singles match, X-Pac versus Chris Jericho. DX was basically done by this point, and Jericho was just kind of looking for something to do. Now, if you've read Jericho's book, there are other reasons for why he was working with X-Pac, but go check out Jericho's book. It's that story is probably more interesting than the match itself. But There wasn't too much of a feud here. It was just kind of like, hey, we've got these two guys that we don't really know what to do with them, so let's just throw them together at a pay-per-view. And they ended up having an okay match. This was a pretty solid match. Not a lot of heat, not a lot of story to it, but it was overall a pretty solid match. Thankfully, Chris Jericho got the win. And solid stuff. And they would have a rematch at the following pay-per-view, which I will talk about when we get to No Mercy. I forgot to mention this one. One of the Austin segments, he actually reunites with The Rock and questions The Rock a little bit and shakes hands with him. And of course, this would go on to be our WrestleMania 17 main event the following year. So they were definitely laying the seeds for that. We also get Austin beating up on Just Joe, a short-lived character during this era. He was supposed to be like the gossip, where he would spread rumors and reveal information to other parties about what other people were doing, and that's kind of what he was doing here. The character didn't last very long, and him getting his ass kicked by Stone Cold Steve Austin was probably the highlight of his career. Then we get probably the match of the night, the Tag Team Championship match inside of a steel cage. The Hardy Boys taking on champions Edge and Christian. This was I know everybody remembers the ladder matches and the TLC matches and the tables matches, but this cage match was actually pretty good. Very, very good stuff. A little bit of old school stuff with Edge and Christian playing the classic heels, using the cage to their advantage, and the Hardy Boys playing the come from behind baby faces to great effect. And of course, you get the great action out of it. Lita got involved and hit a scary as hell Hurricane Rana on Christian outside of the cage. Off of a ladder, and it looked like she came down on her knees, and it looked scary as hell, but obviously she turned out okay. But yeah, there was some really good stuff here, really good spots, and overall, like a really good tag team grudge match with the championships on the line between two of the best teams of the era. The Hardy Boys got the win and became the tag team champions. Like I said, if I have any knock on the tag division during this time, it's that the tag titles change hands way too frequently. I've said it before, Edge and Christian were 7-time champions within the span of a year, which is ridiculous, but that's what it was. Next up, we have the Intercontinental Championship match as Eddie Guerrero defends against Rikishi. This is at that point where Eddie and Chyna's relationship was starting to go south. She had gotten the Playboy deal, and Eddie's jealousy ramped up to the 10th degree. We were just a few weeks out from at this point, a few weeks following this event, Eddie would get caught cheating on Chyna. I believe that was a GTV segment, if I'm not mistaken. And Chyna would break off their engagement. So, but it was at this point that Eddie was starting to mistreat Chyna, and the fans were becoming aware of it, and so they started to boo Eddie, and they definitely let him have it. This match was not great. Kind of a confusing finish where Rikishi attacked Chyna for getting involved, and yet that somehow got him disqualified. I've never seen that happen in any other match where attacking the valet or the corner person gets you disqualified. If that was a rule, then Hulk Hogan would have never won a match. Like, it's crazy. But Rikishi did the sit-down bonsai splash on Chyna after the match, and Eddie kind of left her to be beat up almost. And again, giving more indications that he didn't really care as much about her as he said he did. But so I guess for pushing that storyline, the match did its job effectively, but the match itself was just not very good. Rikishi, of course, was only a few weeks away from being revealed as the man who ran over Stone Cold Steve Austin. He did it for The Rock. And we'll get into that when we get into that. But this whole match didn't really work for me. Then we have one of the big matches on the show. I would argue the best built match on the show. A no disqualifications match with special guest referee Mick Foley. Triple H versus Kurt Angle with Stephanie McMahon in Triple H's corner. But who was she loyal to? This was really the culmination of the love triangle story between the three. which was one of the hottest storylines during the summer and really added a lot of excitement to the SummerSlam event. So you would expect this match to be very, very good, being the most intriguing match on the card. And unfortunately, it wasn't. It was kind of flat. I was surprised. I don't know what it was, but Kurt and Triple H just did not click with each other in this show. It was just kind of a long plotting, like a typical bad Triple H match that you would see in more modern years, but it was just kind of a long plotting match that just didn't generate any excitement or intrigue. And yeah, that was pretty much it. The finish came when Stephanie kicked Kurt Angle below the belt, aligning herself with Triple H. And it seemed like that would be the end of the story, but Triple H aggressively kissed her while he was covered in blood, or had blood in his mouth or something, and that seemed to freak her out a little bit. So the indication was like, ooh, the story's not over. She might still end up with Kurt, which she would by the next pay-per-view as Kurt Angle's business partner. So what was once a hot storyline kind of petered out and became kind of messy. And this was one of the indicators that the WWF was starting to lose their touch a little bit, where one of the best storylines they had going that year didn't really have a satisfying conclusion. And that's unfortunate, because this should have been a really good match, and this should have been a payoff to a really good storyline. And instead it just kind of was like, all right, it's over now. Many people will argue that Stephanie should have just straight up went off with Kurt, and that should have been the story, and Triple H should have turned babyface. I don't know if that was the right way to go with this, but I do know that what they ended up doing here just didn't work, and what they did following the pay-per-view didn't work either. So what are you going to do? They were also trying to add Trish Stratus into the mix, like she would be kind of hitting on Kurt, and Kurt would be like completely oblivious to her advances, which is kind of funny, especially we consider how hot Trish was back then. But that would kind of get dropped too, and then Trish would wind up with Kurt as business partners, and that would lead to the match at the Royal Rumble in 2001, which is another kind of like, again, should have been a really good match, but the storyline leading into it kind of got muddied as things went on. But what are you going to do? But next up is the big moment on the show, and that is the the on-screen return of Stone Cold Steve Austin in front of a live crowd. And it begins with Shane McMahon saying he knows who ran over Stone Cold Steve Austin, and he reveals it to be Steve Blackman, the man that knocked him off of a scaffold at the previous pay-per-view. And he shows footage from an incident in 1999 where Steve Blackman actually assaulted Ken Shamrock with a car. So it's like, he's got a history of doing this. He almost killed me last month. So he absolutely is the man that ran over Stone Cold Steve Austin. So of course, Steve Blackman is not the man who ran over Austin. That would have been completely anticlimactic. It was just Shane trying to get back at somebody who hurt him. And this is when Austin comes out, debuting his new theme song, performed by the band Disturbed, which is an excellent theme song, and it sounded great with Austin. It was a great update to the classic theme. And he didn't use it for very long. I think he used it for less than a year. But man, that song sounded fantastic, and this is the first time he used it, so even better. And the segment goes pretty much as you would expect it. Austin gives a stunner to Blackman, Austin gives a stunner to Shane, drinks some beers, has some fun, and it's like, oh boy, Austin is back, baby. And he'd been gone for 10 months up to this point, not counting his very brief run heading into Backlash earlier that year where he did almost nothing. But it's like, yeah, Austin was back, and he's got some hunting to do to find the man that ran him over. Again, I will elaborate more when we get into No Mercy. But that brings us up to our main event. The Rock defending the WWF Championship against The Undertaker, Chris Benoit, and Kane in a fatal four-way match. This match feels completely random. No knock on any of the challengers. It just felt like, Undertaker and Kane were feuding, and Benoit has some unsettled business with Rock stemming from Fully Loaded, so they just kind of threw all the names in there and made a four-way title match, which, again, I'm not a huge fan of. I don't like multi-man matches being title matches. I've said that before. I think it's a remarkably unfair scenario to the champion, and kind of cheapens the title win if you can beat anybody to win the title. It's just something I'm not a huge fan of. I prefer my title matches be one-on-one, damn it. But in any case, they do the Fatal 4-Way match, and there's a point in the match where it looks like Benoit pinned Undertaker to win the title, but Undertaker's foot was on the rope. And even though the referee called the bell for Benoit and he starts walking out with the belt, Mick Foley once again takes the championship belt away from Benoit and restarts the match, similar to what he did at Fully Loaded earlier that year. One would think that this would lead to some kind of scenario where Benoit just keeps getting screwed out of the title and he gets some kind of revenge on Foley or something. But there was no real payoff to it. So if they were trying to go for a running, I don't want to say a running gag, but like a reoccurring situation with Benoit here, it pretty much ended with this match. So this false finish that they did. While it was very cool at Fully Loaded, it felt kind of half-assed here and kind of took the wind out of the sails for a match that was already kind of lackluster. It was just a match. It was guys doing spots, and then The Rock ultimately got the win. So, as expected, if Rock had dropped the title here, it would have been completely stupid. But, yeah, it was... This was the point where, again, some dents in the armor were starting to show in the WWF, at least creatively. I mean, business-wise, they were still doing really well, and they were destroying WCW, but they had the first 8 months of the year are so friggin' hot, and that's exemplified through their pay-per-views. And then you get to this event, and it's just kind of like, it's there. It's not terrible, but it was just kind of there. I think the return of Steve Austin and the Steel Cage match are reason enough to at least skim over the show and watch the good parts. But unfortunately, you know, the main event's kind of weak. Triple H and Angle kind of fell flat, and the show itself kind of, you know, is hurt by those things. And the undercard is kind of hit or miss as well. So it's I won't say I disliked the show, but it was not one of the better ones from this year. So I'm gonna go ahead and give Unforgiven, you know, middle of the road kind of standing. And yeah, not a great start to this one, but let's see how they did with No Mercy. Now, No Mercy 2000 was an event that emanated from the Pepsi Arena in Albany, New York, and is probably most known for The Rock and Kurt Angle championship match, which I will elaborate more later on, and the in-ring return of Stone Cold Steve Austin as he faced the man that ran him over, Rikishi, in a no-holds-barred match. And these were the main selling points of the event. So we will see how they did here. Because on paper, this should probably be a better show than Unforgiven, but let's see. We open things up with what is essentially a tag team turmoil match, only instead of standard tag team rules, it's tables matches. So what you get are basically like 5 tables matches in a row. It's the Dudley Boy Invitational table match, and it features... let's see who's featured in this thing. The Dudley Boys, obviously. The Right to Censor. Specifically, the Goodfather and Bull Buchanan pairing. Too Cool, Raven and Taz. Lowdown, the team of D'Lo Brown and Chaz. Poor unfortunate souls that they were. And yeah, I think that's it. Is that it? Yeah. All right. So basically, like I said, it's tag team turmoil except for tables. That's basically all it was. And to that end, it was fine. It was solid, I guess. It was basically more of an excuse to showcase the Dudley Boys and kind of give them a win on pay-per-view, which ultimately happened. It looked like the Right to Censor were going to win, but the referee noticed, a referee came out from the back and revealed that they had cheated, that they didn't really put the Dudleys through a table, and they had lied, and they just waited until the ref was down and switched out people who got put through the table, basically. Again, doing the whole like switcheroo thing only with tables. And but Right to Censor got caught, and the Dudley Boys ultimately put them away and got a win on pay-per-view. So even though the Dudley Boys were not in the title picture at this point, they were one of the more over teams in the company. And so a win like this is kind of like keeping them fresh in people's minds and giving them a win to kind of keep them strong for when they do ultimately move back into the tag team title picture. Next up is a very interesting thing. It was supposed to be a intergender 6-person tag team match. Lita and not the Hardy Boys, but the APA taking on Trish Stratus and Test and Albert. And this is something rewatching these pay-per-views that really sticks out to me. In my mind, I don't remember Test and Albert lasting that long as a team, but here we are. They've been together most of the year, and it's like, man, they really, when you think back on this era of WWF, you don't really remember TNA as being one of the long-running teams, but it's like, hey, they were together the better part of a year that was very hot and featured somewhat frequently, so good for them, I guess. They never reached the levels of the Hardys, the Dudleys, Edge and Christian, or even the APA, but, they had a role to play. But anyway, this match was supposed to be a continuation of a feud going on between the APA and TNA that stemmed from a strip poker segment with Trish. Great way to utilize her. And also a continuation of the Trish and Lita feud. But we ended up not getting the match as Test and Albert assaulted the APA behind the scenes and basically left Lita all by her lonesome to get beat up by everybody else. But fortunately, the Hardys did a run-in, prevented Lita from getting destroyed, and the match itself never happened. So it was just kind of came and went, and we had a pay-per-view match, and then we didn't have a pay-per-view match. It was just kind of there, unfortunately. But let's see, what do we have next? We have a steel cage match. Like I mentioned, Chris Jericho and X-Pac got their rematch, and this was it, a steel cage. And overall, it wasn't very long, but it was pretty solid. Again, X-Pac and Jericho taking very little in terms of build-up and turning it into something, because even looking back at this, it's like, did this really need to be a steel cage match? I mean, was their feud really that hot to where it needed the steel cage to kind of add anything to it? But they took the situation, made the most out of it, and had a nice little action-packed match where Chris Jericho once again got the win. 2 pay-per-view wins in a row for Chris. And again, I know Vince wasn't exactly thrilled with Jericho at this point, famously saying that his contract isn't worth the paper that it was printed on, but ultimately Jericho would develop into something special and one of the top stars in WWF, and it was nice to see him get a couple of wins over X-Pac on pay-per-view. Let's see, a bunch of backstage stuff, and then we get the next match. Other members of the Right to Censor, Steven Richards and Val Venus, taking on Billy Gunn and Chyna. Billy Gunn had returned from injury, and the Right to Censor has a problem with Chyna because she posed naked for Playboy, and they have a problem with Billy Gunn because he's obsessed with his ass. This is kind of the last hurrah for Billy Gunn, at least the Mr. Ass incarnation of Billy Gunn, as we'll see by the next event, I believe. And this is a very basic match with the heels once again getting the win. It's just, Right to Censor just seemed to win a lot during this time. And again, they were hated heels, so it's like you run with the heat, I guess. But this would start Chyna on a path to ultimately becoming the women's champion at WrestleMania 17 over Ivory. So this is kind of the beginnings of that storyline. But the real reason that the Right to Censor won here is because of Eddie Guerrero's interference. Because, as I had mentioned before, Eddie had been caught cheating on Chyna and destroyed their engagement, and now the two were basically feuding. They didn't really have like a big burn-off match between Eddie and Chyna, which seems a little strange. But, we would get an elimination match at the next pay-per-view, but there wasn't a big one-on-one encounter done on pay-per-view, which is kind of strange. Because this would have been an opportunity to do that. But, again, what are you going to do? All right. All right, next up is surprisingly, I distinctly remember watching this pay-per-view live at the time and being shocked that this match came as early as it did. But Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Rikishi in a no-holds-barred match came this early in the show. And throughout the first hour or so, they had shown segments saying Austin's not here yet, and Rikishi demanding that Foley declare him the winner that Commissioner Foley declare him the winner via forfeit. And so they come out for the match. Rikishi's waiting on Steve Austin. He's got a sledgehammer with him. And of course, glass breaks, and Austin drives down to the ring in his pickup truck and begins a wild brawl with Rikishi, which is not exactly the best match of Austin's career by far. Not by any means, but if you want to see a wild brawl that's just crazy and you want to see Austin being a violent psychopath, then this match is definitely worth checking out because he beats the ever-living shit out of Rikishi, leaves him a bloody mess, and then puts him in the back of his pickup truck, drives off, then dumps him off somewhere outside the arena and basically tries to murder Rikishi until the police get involved, and Austin even ends up running into a police car in the process and gets arrested. So there's no winner to this match, and there's still a win that Austin is waiting for in regards to the guy that ran him over. Of course, Austin went into this match not seeking to win, but seeking to absolutely straight up murder Rikishi. Not long after this pay-per-view, I think WWF Creative kind of realized that the Rikishi thing wasn't really working, so they kind of pivoted towards Rikishi having an accomplice who was the real mastermind behind everything, who ultimately was revealed to be Triple H. And then Austin would just destroy Rikishi in a steel cage match on Raw, and that was kind of the end of Rikishi. He would get a pay-per-view match with Rock after this, and he would be included in the 6-person Hell in a Cell. More on those later, but the chances of Rikishi becoming a main event star out of this were basically dashed. And so after that bit of insanity, what do you follow it up with? How about Naked Mideon? So new European champion William Regal defended his championship against WWF's resident streaker, Naked Mideon. Now, Mideon was a disciple of The Undertaker during the days of the Ministry of Darkness, and was kind of directionless following that group dissolving, and I guess at this point he settled into a streaker gimmick where he ran around in a thong and naked. And it's like, look, it's one of those things, it's like, I guess it's funny once, and I'm sure guys were looking at it and just howling backstage, but it's one of those things where it's like, okay, but then the bell has to ring, and then you get a match with a naked guy. Well, first of all, Mideon came out with clothes on initially, and then stripped as the match progressed. Thankfully, on Peacock, this is censored. I'm normally not in favor of censorship, but this is one case where it's like, please, cover everything, because I remember watching this pay-per-view live. You saw everything, which is not great. And so this match was terrible. It kind of reminds me of the evening gown match for the hardcore title from King of the Ring that I talked about between Patterson and Briscoe. It's like, look, on paper, it's kind of funny, and it maybe even started off kind of funny, but once the bell rings, you got to make this thing work, and it just couldn't work. And look, I like to laugh as much as the next guy, but there's only so much you can get out of a fat guy in a thong. But thank God William Regal retained it. I think this might have been the end of Naked Mideon. I'm not sure. Maybe he continued. I do remember he did a bit with Chyna where he ran around naked the ring while she was plugging her Playboy. I don't remember if that was after this or not. But in any case, so that was Naked Mideon. And we also get this, something that aired on Sunday Night Heat earlier. They showed a edited interview where Kurt Angle is interviewing The Rock using clips from previous Rock interviews to kind of to answer the questions. And it was Kurt Angle trying to basically embarrass The Rock. And it was kind of funny, and again, showed the type of personality that Kurt had, where he was kind of a natural at the entertainment side of things, surprisingly. And next up, we get the WWF Tag Team Championship match. The Hardy Boys taking on Los Conquistadors, Uno and Dos. Now, it is ultimately revealed that the men in the mask are Edge and Christian. We knew it was Edge and Christian, and the reason that they had to wear masks is because it was determined that it was determined by Commissioner Foley that as long as the Hardys are the tag team champions, Edge and Christian can no longer go for the tag team title. So they concocted the Conquistador identity, wore the masks, and then worked their way into a title shot, which they would ultimately win here, getting the victory. But then the next night on Raw, Edge and Christian tried to orchestrate a situation where they hired two guys to dress up like the Conquistadors, and then Edge and Christian would beat the Conquistadors and win back the tag titles. But then they go out there for their match, and the Conquistadors are actually the Hardys, and they beat Edge and Christian and win the tag titles back. So in all this confusion, Foley has to determine that Edge and Christian's tag team championship win from No Mercy has to stand, but the Hardy Boys' victory as the Conquistador stands as well. So the Hardys walk out the tag team champions. Now, I thought the whole situation with the Conquistadors, I thought it was funny then, and I think it was funny now, and I think it was very creative of Edge and Christian, one of the creative ways to use them. And I think it was very clever. It was a very clever angle and story. The problem, and it's kind of a similar problem that WCW ran into with Starrcade 1990, where it's Sting versus the Black Scorpion, and Ric Flair's the Black Scorpion, but he can't tip it off that he's Ric Flair, so he has to wrestle completely different from Ric Flair, and instead of like hiding his identity, it just looks super awkward. And that's kind of what this match was, where it's Edge and Christian under the masks, but they can't show that they're Edge and Christian, so they can't do any of their trademark stuff. So the match just kind of comes off as kind of weird and awkward as a result, and less entertaining. The only indicator that it was Edge and Christian was the finish, because Christian hit the unprettier for the win. And again, using one move is obviously fine, because that kind of tips it off what exactly happened to the audience. But them restraining that much, I felt kind of held back what both teams are capable of, and didn't really help the story all that much, and not as much as it should have. Again, on paper, the situation was actually very clever, but again, it's one of those situations where the bell rings and it creates all sorts of problems. There's certain things in wrestling that sound great. It's kind of like doing an evil doppelganger character like the fake Undertaker or the evil Sin Cara and things like that, or the fake Kane. Like, that stuff all sounds great on paper, but then when you get to the match time, the obvious differences between the real McCoy and the fake are so apparent that the match itself just doesn't work. And it's a similar type of situation with this, where it's like having the heels get around being banned from a title shot by wearing masks, I think is very clever on paper, but then once you get to the match, it creates too many problems where the match doesn't work. And this is probably the worst Hardy Boy versus Edge and Christian match, which isn't a knock on anybody involved. It's more the situation that caused that. All right, and next up is Chris Benoit versus Triple H. Now, this is a match that started because Chris Benoit headbutted Stephanie on Raw, and now the two were going to be feuding. And actually, not long after this, the Radicals would reunite, and Triple H would employ them as his henchmen to attack anybody that got in his way. So it's like this hot feud would not last very long, because Chris Benoit and Triple H would be on the same side almost immediately after this. But there was an interesting scenario where Stephanie was focusing on managing Kurt Angle, but she was lending Triple H advice on how to beat Chris Benoit, and even showed him a tape. Now, we don't really know exactly what she showed him and what Triple H realized from watching the tape as far as doing tape study of Benoit. I think they had a really good idea there. I think it was very interesting, but it wasn't a fully thought out idea, and it just kind of came off as, again, like I said, kind of unfulfilled. But again, this is another match that Triple H had, and Triple H has had a stellar year in 2000. You look at the matches with Cactus Jack, the matches with The Rock, the Last Man Standing match with Chris Jericho, and various other things that he's had, the main event of SummerSlam. Triple H has had an absolutely stellar year, and I would argue that you'd be hard-pressed to find any wrestlers that had a better year than Triple H did in 2000. But then you look at Unforgiven, the match with Angle, not too great. And then you look at this match with Benoit, which should be very good, and it was just kind of, it wasn't very good. And I don't know what the problem was. Maybe it was because Triple H was in this weird phase where he wasn't really a full-fledged heel, but he wasn't a full-fledged face either. And he was kind of transitioning into being a babyface, a thing that would go completely unfulfilled, because he would be revealed as the one that orchestrated Rikishi running over Stone Cold Steve Austin. But yeah, at this point in Triple H, it was like the fans wanted to like him, but the creative didn't really know how to handle it. And then ultimately, they just had him go mega heel again. So, this match was just kind of awkward and plotting. It was just guys trading holds the whole time. And it just didn't work. This was another match that kind of fell flat for me. But a match that did not fall flat was Kurt Angle versus The Rock for the WWF Championship, a match that was made into a no disqualification match, and a match in which Kurt Angle had Stephanie in his corner, giving him a clear advantage. This was Kurt Angle's best match up to this point, I would say. It had a lot of the hallmarks of the Attitude Era, with a lot of brawling all over the place and a lot of gaga, with Stephanie getting involved and getting a Rock bottom, and Rikishi getting involved because he wanted to help Rock win the title, but he kept screwing up, and he actually cost Rock the title. A lot of gaga in this thing. But overall, it was very exciting, and it ended with the shocking victory of Kurt Angle winning the WWF Championship, winning the title less than a year after his debut. I've talked a lot in this series about how Kurt Angle's momentum was largely kind of haphazard throughout the year, where it's like he would win at one pay-per-view and then he'd lose two, and he would drop a title here and he would get destroyed at this show, but then he'd win the King of the Ring or something crazy like that. So it was very kind of push and pull with him all year, but I think Kurt Angle did such a good job on the entertainment side of things, and I think even though the Love Triangle storyline didn't end the way that it should have, at the very least, it kept Angle at like a consistent presence in people's minds, and it promoted him fairly regularly, to the point where him in a main event didn't feel wrong. And even though I would consider his championship win here somewhat shocking, it was still like I don't want to say he was completely ready for it, but it didn't seem completely batshit crazy that Angle won the belt either. It was kind of this weird phase where it's like, I wasn't sitting there saying it's like Angle should absolutely win the belt, and I wasn't sitting there going, it's like, oh my God, are you crazy? Don't put the belt on him. That would be stupid. It was kind of this weird middle phase where it's like, if they tried it, it'd be fun. And obviously Kurt Angle would go on to have a Hall of Fame career, so this is the first major world championship run of a man who would go on to become considered to be by many one of the greatest workers in the history of the business. So good for Kurt. I think this is a big night for him, and I think if you're a Kurt Angle fan, then this match and this show is probably a must-see. That's the major I think that's the major positive of the show, is Kurt Angle's championship victory and the match itself, which was very good. I guess I would say that the Austin Rikishi match was fun for just being a wild brawl. But other than that, you get the main event, you get the Austin match. But other than that, I think No Mercy was kind of a bad show. I guess X-Pac and Chris Jericho was pretty good too in the steel cage. It was just kind of like there wasn't... some of the big stuff really worked. And it's the stuff in between that just kind of felt like empty voids, and not all of it worked. But it wasn't exceedingly horrible either. The major disappointment, I think, were the disappointments were the tag title match and the Triple H Benoit match, which should have been much better than it was. So, again, kind of another middle of the road pay-per-view, not one of their better ones, but not like absolute worst. I mean, it's better than King of the Ring and WrestleMania for sure, but it was still like, if Kurt Angle didn't win the title here, would anybody really remember this show? I don't know. But as is, it's an overall okay show. I'll say that much. And next up, we have the final of the Big Five from 2000, Survivor Series. And this is a very interesting event, to say the least. It emanated from the Ice Palace in Tampa, Florida, and featured a wild main event between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H in a no-holds-barred match, set 1 year after Austin was run over by the car. And the match was about as intense as you would expect, but we have a bunch of matches to get through before I get to that match, and let's get started. We started off with a somewhat random match. I do not remember the setup for this at all. So it was Trish Stratus, Test, and Albert taking on not Lita and the Hardy Boys, but Crash Holly, his cousin Molly Holly, and Steve Blackman. that's about as random as it gets. Now, Hardcore Holly wasn't there because he had suffered the injury in that match with Kurt Angle where Angle did the moonsault and came down on Hardcore's arm, broke his arm. I don't remember the setup for this at all, but on paper it just looks like a random assortment of talent. But it was an excuse to show off Molly Holly, who is a very talented worker, and it was nice having her on the show. And young Molly Holly, pretty cute, not gonna lie. She was pretty cute, but there was a lot more to her than her looks. And Trish was getting more ring time, and she seemed to be getting better and better with each match that I see her in. It's like young Trish. It's like, man, she was getting better and better. Bumping in particular, she seemed to be up for anything when it comes to bumping. But in any case, we move from there on. Oh, and I should also note that Molly Holly got the win for her team using the Molly go round to get the victory. So next up, we got a traditional Survivor Series match. We got the Radicals, now fully reformed. Chris Benoit, Perry Saturn with Terry Runnels, always nice seeing her. Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko taking on not DX, but a shitty incarnation of, a shitty team made up of mostly former DX members. So it's Chyna, Billy Gunn, who is now the one Billy Gunn, losing the Mr. Ass moniker. You can really start to see like the Attitude Era, like the elements of the Attitude Era slowly fading away here. It's like we lose Val Venus, we lose the Godfather, we lose Mr. Ass Billy Gunn. It's like, man, this is starting to take the edge off a little bit. But anyway, Chyna, Billy Gunn, Road Dogg, and Road Dogg's new partner, K-Quick, who you all now know as Ron the Truth Killings or R-Truth. I'll say this right now. Their rapping entrance is so bad. Like, so bad. And this was Road Dogg's kind of last hurrah in the WWF before leaving and then staying away for a few years, where he would ultimately come back. But this was, the New Age Outlaws were done. DX was done. And he's working with a very green K-Quick, who is not very good. I'll be honest. I mean, Ron Killings was never one of my favorites. I think his current run as like a comedy character is the best thing they could have ever done with him, because whenever they tried to push him as a main eventer, I was like, no, please don't do that. But in any case, we get the Survivor Series match here. And, I've said about Survivor Series several times, when they do these traditional Survivor Series matches, the only times they really work nowadays is when there's some kind of a major stipulation involved. Because the simple attraction of having so many guys in a match and creating all these different pairings really has no meaning anymore because of all the TV time that they eat up. We see all the pairings on TV by the time Survivor Series rolls around anyway, so the whole concept feels almost outdated. And that was true even back then. So the Survivor Series matches on the show are kind of flat for that reason. And they were flat the year before too at 99. It's just with Raw, and you see all of these people interact on a fairly regular basis. It doesn't have the simple appeal that the earlier Survivor Series had. Like, you look at Survivor Series 89, and it's Hogan, Demolition, and Jake Roberts on a team, and I'm like, holy shit, I need to see that, because I never see those guys interact. And you see, like, 1990 when it's Warrior teaming up with the Legion of Doom and the Texas Tornado, and it's like, whoa, that's awesome, I need to see that. And that's something that was largely gone from the Survivor Series, even by this point. Just didn't quite work. I think the Radicals did the best they could. This was really kind of, I guess, the culmination of the Chyna-Eddie Guerrero feud, at least on pay-per-view. And it was, the match itself, I guess, was okay, but like I said, the Survivor Series concept had lost all meaning by this point. The elimination matches are just kind of flat. The Radicals get the win, thank God, because if they had the Radicals lose to the crappy DX, that would have been absolutely abominable. All right, now we move on to another random Chris Jericho feud. For those of you who remember the time period, this is when Chris Jericho was feuding with the Big Red Machine Kane, a feud that started because Chris Jericho accidentally spilled coffee on Kane, and the Big Red Machine then proceeded to beat the ever-living crap out of Chris Jericho. Kind of a random feud, kind of an odd pairing. You don't think of Kane and Chris Jericho working with each other. It was it was a very strange pairing, and I don't think they had that great a chemistry either. I guess you would think that they would have a nice styles clash, with Kane being the much bigger foe and being able to overpower Jericho and automatically making Jericho the underdog. But I think Kane works better when he's with somebody as kind of otherworldly as him. It's kind of like Undertaker in that regard, where it's the crazier the opponent, the better it is for Undertaker. And Jericho, even though he's an over-the-top personality, he feels kind of like a normal guy compared to Kane. And Jericho does better when he has someone more like his size and his speed who he can kind of have a more athletic match with. Like guys like Rock and Chris and Kurt Angle, he had amazing chemistry with, because I think their styles complement each other very well. As is, it's... this match was a little off, a little awkward. It was okay. I think the match they had the next month at Armageddon was much better, but this one was just kind of like, all right, feud starting. Kane would get the win with the chokeslam, but Jericho would attack him later in the show, indicating that the feud was not over, and we've got more to do. And next up is the European title match. Now, I had mentioned that Bob Holly was injured, but... I was actually kind of incorrect here, because it kind of slipped my mind. It's like, oh yeah, Bob Holly did return to TV and was challenging William Regal for the European title. It was, again, kind of a nothing match. Holly's back, and he's bringing his more roughneck hardcore style to William Regal's more classical wrestling style, and they're kind of laying into each other a little bit, which is nice to see. But Holly got disqualified, and setting up a potential rematch for down the road. But a match itself was just kind of like, all right, it was there. It was there. I like William Regal as European champion, but they haven't lined up very good opponents for him. Next up, we get another backstage segment with Trish hitting on Kurt Angle and Kurt being completely oblivious, which again is hilarious. Next, we get one of our big matches on the show, The Rock taking on his family member Rikishi. A match that stems from both Rikishi revealing himself to be the one that ran over Austin, and two, Rikishi costing Rock the WWF title at the previous pay-per-view. And as far as Rikishi's heel turn goes, there are a lot of failings and a lot of things that went wrong, but I thought this was one of the better matches that Rikishi had during this time. I thought it went very well. Of course, it's The Rock. He brings a lot of excitement to things, and Rock is willing to do things like take the stink face and various things like that. And Rikishi, for a guy as round as he is, he's actually a tremendous athlete and takes some amazing bumps. Like, a guy that big taking the inside-out bump on a clothesline is pretty impressive. And I think the two actually complemented each other pretty well and had a pretty good match out of it. One of the better matches on the show. Rock got the win, obviously, but Rikishi proceeded to hit a few bonsai drops on Rock post-match, indicating that Rikishi wasn't quite done with him. Again, this would lead into the Hell in a Cell at the next pay-per-view. I'll get there when we get there, but next up, we get some backstage segments with Triple H conferring with the Radicals about what their plan is for Stone Cold Steve Austin, but Commissioner Mick Foley, always sticking his nose in, decided to inform them that the Radicals will be barred from ringside during the main event. But Triple H and Benoit and Guerrero and Malenko and Saturn had other plans to get around that. But next match, it's the Women's Championship match. And it is Lita going up against the champion Ivory, who is fully into the right to censor stuff at this point and holding the title, which I've said before was the best run of her career. Now, this match is actually somewhat memorable because Lita got busted open hard way during the match, and that made it somewhat memorable because you don't see the women bleed. That was something, even in the Attitude Era, that was something you never saw. But Lita getting busted open hard way created an interesting visual. It made for like a little bit more of an intense women's title match than we're used to seeing during this time period. So unfortunately, they weren't able to craft it into a really good, solid match. I've heard Ivory talk about it in a shoot interview where she was kind of like, they got some blood, it got some color, and she was like, oh, let's turn this into something and kind of spice things up. And instead, her and Lita just didn't click as opponents, so it was just kind of an awkward match as is. And Ivory gets to retain, and obviously she would have bigger fish to fry as she would be going up against Chyna at both the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. But for what it was, this was it's memorable because of Lita getting busted open the hard way. But other than that, it's it would probably be a forgotten match. All right, next up we have the WWF Championship match. The Undertaker taking on Kurt Angle, the defending champion. Obviously, it's his first. The chances of Kurt dropping the title his first month in are very low, and sure enough, he did retain here. But there's two things that I will always remember this match for. One, the finish, where Kurt Angle employed his near identical looking brother. Like, if you look at him, Eric Angle and Kurt Angle together, it's like, oh my God, they really do look alike. And I had to do a double take while rewatching the match. But they do the switcheroo finish where Angle is able to kind of use Eric to take the last ride, trick the referee and the Undertaker, and giving him an opening to come in, roll out, get a roll-up win over Undertaker, and sneak out of there with the title. So Angle got the win here. But the other thing I remember this match for are those god-awful, ugly pants that the Undertaker was wearing this night, which were apparently the Godfather's pants. That ugly puke green, like tie-dye color, they are absolutely hideous pants, and it's the ugliest thing the Undertaker's ever worn. And again, I'm no fashion guru by any stretch of the imagination, but those pants were absolutely hideous, and Undertaker deserves to be made fun of for wearing them. But the match itself was fine. It was overall pretty solid, much better than their fully loaded match earlier in the year. But like I said, the title change was very unlikely at this point. And but they had some fun with it, and Undertaker kind of whipping up on the kind of I guess we'll say naive heel who thinks he's better than he really is, especially when going up against someone like Taker. And the match was fun, and Kurt Angle was settling into his role as the main eventer because he's a great athlete and everything, but being a main eventer, you have to have different skill set, and you have to be able to do different things as far as telling your stories goes. And I think Kurt was adjusting quite well to that. So overall, this was a pretty solid match. Check it out for the finish and Undertaker's absolutely ugly pants. Alrighty. Then we go into another traditional Survivor Series match. This one showcasing the tag team division. Edge and Christian and the Right to Censor, specifically Goodfather and Bull Buchanan, taking on the Dudley Boys and the Hardy Boys. This thing felt like, I don't know if they ran out of time or what, but this one felt really, really rushed. And not very good. It was just kind of like they were just rushing it to kind of get it over with, and I don't know if the show ran long and they just had to kind of get through it as quickly as possible, but it was not very good. The Hardy Boys and the Dudley Boys ended up getting the win, giving the babyface teams, essentially the two top face teams in the company right now, the Dudleys and the Hardys, getting them a win. But the Survivor Series match itself was not very good, and a far cry from the old school Survivor Series, 20-man, 10-team elimination matches. This is nowhere near as good as those. But like I said, the Survivor Series elimination match concept had kind of been hurt by this point. But that leads us into our main event. It was Triple H taking on Stone Cold Steve Austin in a no-holds-barred match. And like I said, Triple H was revealed as the one who was the mastermind behind Rikishi running over Stone Cold Steve Austin, setting up this match. And this was a wild one, just a wild brawl all the way through. And one of just a really, a nice brawl and a nice hardcore Attitude Era style match that was really only a preview for a much better match in February of 2001 at No Way Out. I think the best match that Triple H and Austin ever had together. And the match itself was a lot of fun to watch. But what this match is really known for is its ending. There was no winner. So it's the second Austin pay-per-view match in a row where there is no winner, and he just went absolutely crazy apeshit in trying to murder his opponent, and there was no winner to the match, and the match gets thrown out. What we get here is that they make it look like Triple H is luring Austin backstage to get him run over yet again. And Triple H is having the Radicals kind of put Austin in position so he can run him down with the car. And then out of nowhere, Austin is shown driving a forklift and picks up Triple H in his car, raises him up into the sky, and as Triple H practically begs for his life and yells Jesus Christ and holy shit and everything else you could possibly imagine, Austin drops him off of the forklift with the car crashing down to the ground. Now, this was an amazing visual, a shocking thing to end the show on. I remember watching it as a kid. I was like, holy shit, Austin just straight up murdered Triple H. Oh my God. I need to watch Raw the next night to see... I need to see the next night to see how they follow this up, because that was absolutely insane. Unfortunately, it ended up being one of the worst things that WWF ever did, because Triple H was literally back, not at the Raw the next night, but at the Raw after that. So I was like, you mean to tell me he got dropped from a forklift like 20 feet in the air and it crashed in the car that flipped upside down, and he's well enough to come back 8 days later? Somehow I don't believe you. It was one of the earliest indicators, like, all right, so this stuff doesn't really hurt as much as you say it does, and it's just all a bunch of phony baloney. And, Triple H should have been gone for like at least a month, you would think, at least. He should have had a few weeks off. And it's really funny, I mentioned their match at No Way Out 2001. If you go back and watch the video package for that match that they have before the match begins, they make it, in the editing of the events, they make it look like Triple H was gone for a substantial amount of time before returning and attacking Austin and setting up this match, which is not true. Triple H maintained a fairly regular presence on the show up until the segment where he attacked Austin and made his return. But it was... so great visual, great segment for what it was and everything, but they ultimately killed it by bringing Triple H back 8 days later. So that is that. But so what did I think of Survivor Series? There's a lot of deadweight on this show. That much is clear. I think the big matches were mostly good. Like, there's kind of a triple main event thing going on with Rikishi, Rock, Taker, and Angle, and Triple H and Austin. All six men would then go on to main event the very next pay-per-view, the final event of the year. And, those matches are mostly fine, but the Survivor Series matches are mostly not too great. And most of the undercard kind of falls flat as well. So it's, again, not a very good show. We're... 2000, they had such a strong string of shows from Royal Rumble to SummerSlam, and now we're just kind of in this weird, they're fine. And again, I think it's very indicative of the time period where creatively they were starting to slip a little bit. And let's close this out with the final pay-per-view of the year 2000 for the WWF. Armageddon, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is the second Armageddon event, and it's an event that would actually stick around for a while. I don't know why, but in my mind, I don't remember them using Armageddon that much, but for most of the next decade, Armageddon actually stuck around, and this show also debuted the End Is Near theme, which kind of became the Armageddon theme song. It was meant to highlight the Hell in a Cell main event. It's a great song that they cooked up for the show, and it was great whenever they used it. I think it's one of the better original songs that WWF ever came up with. So great stuff utilizing that song. But anyway, Armageddon, it emanated from the Birmingham Jefferson Civic Center in Birmingham, Alabama. And we start things off with a Survivor Series elimination intergender match. 6 people involved in this one, with Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy, and Lita taking on Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, and Perry Saturn, with Terry. Always nice seeing Terry. This one stemmed from a situation that was going on where Dean Malenko really wanted to sleep with Lita. I mean, who can blame him? But they did a bit where if he beats her in a match, she has to go out on a date with him. and they filmed the whole date, and they did this whole segment on TV where Lita got Dean in his hotel room and looked absolutely hot in her lingerie set of choice. But it was all a ruse where the Hardy Boys were in the hotel room and just beat the shit out of Dean in the process. So this match kind of stems from that whole storyline. Normally the match where if you lose, you go on the date with me would be the pay-per-view match. But in any case, so they decided to do Survivor Series elimination rules here, which is a little strange because we just had Survivor Series a few weeks earlier. It's like, why didn't you do the match then? I don't know. But in any case, the match actually turned out pretty well, better than all the elimination matches that we got at the actual Survivor Series event, where through some weird circumstances, Lita and Dean Malenko were the last two combatants left, with Dean ultimately defeating Lita despite a valiant effort on her part. It was actually this was a match that actually used the intergender concept fairly effectively and showcased Lita's skills with her doing moonsaults and flipping all over the place and everything, but ultimately losing to the much bigger, stronger, and more seasoned opponent. It was the fans were really getting behind her too, so I thought this was a pretty solid opener overall, and they managed to make something out of it. Then we get, and I should also note as we move in further along in the show, throughout the event, they spent a lot of time showing interviews and previews and old clips of previous Hell in a Cell matches, really hyping up this Hell in a Cell main event with 6 people in it. There was a lengthy interview with Undertaker where he talked about his experiences in Hell in a Cell and how he's kind of the king of it. They showed a lot of footage from Cactus Jack and Triple H earlier in the year. They showed footage from Taker and Shawn, Taker and Mankind, and various other things, and just really want to drive the point home that Hell in a Cell is like the most dangerous thing ever. And they even did a bit where Stephanie McMahon did not want the match to happen out of fear for her husband's safety. So Vince McMahon tried to stop the match from taking place, which takes up a lot of TV time on the show and really just sets up Vince's beef with Mick Foley, the commissioner, which will ultimately lead to Foley getting fired as commissioner and setting up Foley's role as special guest referee for the Vince and Shane match at WrestleMania 17. So a lot of stuff being set up here, but maybe they kind of beat a dead horse as far as really driving the point home of how dangerous that Hell in a Cell is. I guess I'll take this over Tim White shooting himself, which they actually did on pay-per-view. But whatever, that was a few years later. Anyway, next match is the European Championship match. William Regal taking on Hardcore Holly in a rematch from the previous show. Another quick one. This one's a fairly short match, but it's a little bit more focused than the previous one was. And overall, pretty good. It's, again, not a very long match, but they crammed a lot into the few minutes that they got. And overall, it was okay-ish. Again, much better than the last one, but William Regal walked out with the title here, which was the appropriate outcome, I do believe. Moving right along, more interviews. All right, next up is another intergender match. Val Venus taking on Chyna. Again, this is Chyna's feud with the Right to Censor. She lost the match at Survivor Series, and here she is. She actually loses the match to Val Venus, which is a little crazy. I would have actually expected Chyna to go over here. But she was being set up to beat the ever-living Tar out of Ivory and take the women's title from her, but that would take a few months. And the Right to Censor would be constant roadblocks in Chyna's way. And like I said, Val Venus got a bit of a surprise win here. Match was okay-ish, but maybe a little dry. But it was just a cog in the storyline with Chyna being set up to dethrone Ivory, which was the big thing here. But Val Venus got to show off some of the things that he can do. I think people forget that Sean Morley was actually a really good worker. And whenever he gets a chance to show it off, it's always good to see. If you want to see a good Val Venus match, check out his European title match with D'Lo Brown at SummerSlam 1998. Where are we? I talked about this. All right, then we get I talked about the Vince McMahon stuff where he tried to stop the Hell in a Cell match from happening, but at this point in the show comes to an absolute screeching halt as Vince McMahon cuts a lengthy promo about the dangers of the Hell in a Cell match. Again, they've really beat this into the ground, and it's like, look, I'm all for like keeping the build for a match evolving throughout the night, but this just felt like they were being redundant and just saying the same thing over and over again. It's like, we get it, the Hell in a Cell is dangerous, we get it, Vince doesn't want the match to happen, blah blah blah, we get it. Just a long drawn out segment that didn't need to be there and just ate up time on the pay-per-view. But next up, we get a last man standing match between Chris Jericho and Kane, continuing their whole clashing of styles feud that they had going over a cup of coffee. And this match was pretty good, much better than the one they had at Survivor Series, and a very solid, nice brawling match with Kane dominating most of it, as you would expect. Had this been a regular match, Kane would have won this thing multiple times, but with the last man standing rules, it gave Jericho a little bit more time to recover in between the big moves. And the finish was actually fairly impressive looking, as they used the Armageddon set, which had this big wall of barrels set up, and Jericho was able to push the wall of barrels down on top of Kane, which kept him pinned down for the 10 count, giving Jericho the victory here. So, yeah, this one was pretty good, and I thought the finish was fairly creative. And, yeah, they used the set effectively, something that used to happen a lot back in these days. I remember at the previous Armageddon, it had, like, military equipment on the stage, and Triple H used that extensively against Vince during their match. And there were also a bunch of wrecked cars used in front of the set, and that would come into play during the main event. And I look at this, and I go, man, remember when the sets actually looked creative and distinct to that event? That was one of the major pluses of WCW. You knew when you were watching Bash at the Beach. You knew when you were watching Halloween Havoc, because all the shows looked different from each other. And nowadays, you look at the events, and it's like, dude, aside from WrestleMania, all the shows look exactly the same. Why do they even bother traveling? Like, what's the point, you know? If you're just going to make every show look the goddamn same. But anyway, so that was that. The last man standing match was pretty good. Next up, we get a 4-way match for the WWE Tag Team Championships. Right to Censor, defending the titles. Again, like, it's just crazy how often the titles switched around during this time. Goodfather and Bull Buchanan defending against Edge and Christian. Road Dogg and K-Quick. Why are they in this match? And the Dudley Boys. Again, I can't stress enough how bad the rap entrance for Road Dogg and K-Quick is. It needs to be seen to be believed. That team was not long for this world. But anyways, so yeah, very basic tag team match. This feels like we're so far removed from the TLC match, which I guess we're only 4 months out. It's not that big of a deal. But that match was so exciting. And then we got the cage match the next month. And since then, it's just kind of been like a bunch of random title changes and less than stellar matches. It's very, I don't know. It was kind of too many moving parts, maybe, is the problem. Too many teams that they wanted to focus on. Imagine me criticizing WWE for having too many teams. I wish they had this many teams again. But, Road Dogg and K-Quick really did not need to be in this. That should have been recognized earlier that they were not very good as a team. And Edge and Christian did get the win here, and I believe this was their final title win of the year. Maybe they had one more, because I do remember they lost the tag titles to The Rock and Undertaker, of all people, and then won that back the next week. So I don't remember exactly when that was, but Edge and Christian, again, 7-time tag team champions in the span of a year. You really kill the longevity of a team if they win the tag titles that many times in that short of a time frame, but... And that's really was the major problem with an otherwise very strong tag division. But, yeah, what are you going to do? Next up is the Intercontinental Championship match. The one Billy Gunn defending against Chris Benoit. And this was kind of the last gasp for Billy Gunn. The one Billy Gunn didn't work. Nowhere near as over as badass Billy Gunn. And this match is absolutely terrible. Like, just a really awful match with Benoit trying to make something out of it, trying to trade holds with him and get some chain wrestling going. But the crowd just could not be bothered to give a shit. Like, they didn't care about the one Billy Gunn, and they didn't care about this match at all. Benoit won back the Intercontinental title, setting him up for his match with Jericho at the Royal Rumble. A much better match, one of the better ladder matches of all time. And yeah, that was pretty much it. The IC title match was pretty bad. Next up, we get the Women's Championship match, a triple threat match. Ivory defending against Molly Holly and Trish Stratus. And Jesus Christ, if they did that match in like 2003 or 2004, it actually would have been pretty good. But here, Trish is still like in that early learning phase. Molly Holly's still somewhat new and undefined as a character, I guess, even though she's a really solid worker. Ivory was the only like firmly established talent that was really in this thing. But the match was also insanely short too, so it felt like they were just kind of getting it out of the way to get ready for the main event. It was very rushed, but they crammed a lot of action into the 2 or 3 minutes that they got, kind of showing off what the three girls could do, but none of it was in a very cohesive story or flow or anything like that. It was just a bunch of spots until they did the quick finish. But yeah, this is the signs of the greatness that these women would go on to show are definitely there. It makes me wonder if they had given this match like another 5 minutes, if it would have turned into like one of the better matches on the show. But as is, it's just pure filler. And then we get the main event. The big main event, a 6-man Hell in a Cell match. Kurt Angle defending the WWF Championship against Triple H, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, and Rikishi. Now, I've said before, I'm not a huge fan of defending the world title in a multi-man match, especially one like this, because it's remarkably unfair to the champion that he could lose his title without even being involved in the decision. But you look at this match, it's like Hell in a Cell, which at this point still had that moniker of being the WWF's like ultimate gimmick match, something that has been horrendously reduced in recent years. Thanks a lot, those who put together The Fiend versus Seth Rollins. But you look at this match, and it's like, man, it's got Steve Austin, it's got The Rock, it's got Triple H, it's got The Undertaker, and it's got Kurt Angle, who's the young new champion, and Rikishi, who was, kind of the outlier in this thing. But it's like, you look at that, it's like, man, this is like some of the biggest stars of the year of that particular point in time. These were the biggest stars of the year. And I think another one of my problems with like multi-man world title matches is that a lot of the times you get a bunch of participants that are not on a main event level, just being in there just to add an extra body in there. And I guess you could say Rikishi was kind of that in this, but there was some justification giving his role in major storylines heading in. I look at this match, and for the most part, it's like, yeah, these are all guys that could potentially be world champion, and they were the biggest stars of the time period. So really a great assortment of talent, all in one match. And what we ended up getting was a wild, kind of bloody free-for-all. It's the first time that Kurt Angle ever bled, as far as I know. Rikishi bled, Undertaker bled, Rock bled, Austin bled, Triple H bled. Everybody was bleeding. It was just a complete just total free-for-all. And there was one point in the match where Vince McMahon came out with this giant truck full of hay, which we found out later why it was full of hay, as he tried to chain it to the cell and then tear the cell down piece by piece. But he was stopped by Mick Foley, and with the door ripped off its hinges, that allowed for the 6 men to kind of spill outside the cage and go all over the place. This is where they spilled up onto the stage and wrestled in front of the wrecked cars, which I alluded to earlier, taking advantage of the set. Again, why don't we have creative sets anymore? I don't know. A lot of them climbed up to the very top of the cell with Austin and Triple H brawling and Austin hitting a stunner on top of the cell. Angle being up there, Rikishi being up there, and Undertaker being up there. And this led to the major highlight of the match. And this is a funny one because when I watched this back when it first happened as a young teenager, I remember thinking that when Undertaker took Rikishi and pushed him off the cell and he landed in the back of the truck with the hay in it, I remember thinking, it's like, yeah, I mean, that's impressive and all, but it's not exactly the Mick Foley bump from that Hell in a Cell. It's not as good as the Mick Foley bump. Looking at it now, that spot is significantly more terrifying than the Mick Foley spot, and I'll explain why. The Mick Foley spot, Taker threw Foley and threw him forward, so Foley was like able to kind of land the way he wanted to. Again, he separated his shoulder, and it's scary as hell. Look, I wouldn't want to take either one of these bumps. I'm just kind of trying to paint a picture here. Very scary, but Foley was actually somewhat in control of the situation, could control his body. Rikishi is completely relying on the fact that the truck is in the right spot and that Undertaker is pushing him into the right spot. And he's falling backwards off of like the 16-foot or however tall the old Hell in a Cell was, and just falling backwards 6 feet and just hoping to God that he lands in the truck and the hay and everything. I was like, that is, falling backwards from that height is scary as fuck. And I cannot believe Rikishi did it, but kudos to him for being willing to take such a crazy bump. But this match was an absolutely wild match. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite Hell in a Cell matches, but if you like a completely bloody spectacle, this is one that's definitely worth watching because it is just so crazy. And it's a lot of fun to watch, and you get to see all the guys hit their finishers on each other, which ultimately ended with Kurt Angle able to get a somewhat anticlimactic sneaky pin over The Rock, who had just eaten a stunner from Austin, and Austin wasn't able to capitalize, but the bloodied Kurt Angle was, as he retained his championship. A championship that Kurt Angle would hold until No Way Out 2001. So, but that ends Armageddon. Armageddon overall, again, it's just kind of like, it's kind of a one-match show. The Hell in a Cell is definitely worth checking out, and I recommend it to everybody. But the rest of the show is kind of hit and miss. The Last Man Standing was pretty good. The opening intergender match was pretty good. Everything else is either bad or pointless. And it's another kind of middle-of-the-road pay-per-view as a result. And that kind of matches up to how I felt about the year 2000, or how I remember feeling about the year 2000, where it's like Royal Rumble to SummerSlam, absolutely stellar. I love that period for the WWF. But then as you get into the fall, and you do the Who Ran Over Austin storyline, you do the love triangle, and you start paying these things off, and they kind of drop the ball with both of those. I was like, creative is getting a little sloppy here. And these shows kind of indicate not that WWF had turned to shit, but that, again, the warts were starting to show up creatively a little bit. It was impacting the pay-per-views, because you start from having a bunch of stellar pay-per-views for the first 8 months, with WrestleMania and King of the Ring being the outliers, to ending the year on 4 kind of middle-of-the-road pay-per-views with a couple of standout moments in matches. So it is what it is. Now, WWF would get red hot again going into January with the Royal Rumble and then the road to WrestleMania. I think the shows from January to WrestleMania 17 and including WrestleMania 17 are stellar, and that was like the last truly like red hot period during this time. And then after WrestleMania 17, it's just been a slow, steady decline into the boring, formulaic, and damn near unwatchable show that it is now. It's like, they didn't become what they are now overnight. This was a long march into the grave. And so yeah, WrestleMania 17 was the end of a lot of things, and it's the end of the good days too. Maybe I should go back and review the first 3 pay-per-views of 2001. That would be fun. Because there was a lot of good stuff on all 3 shows that are worth checking out. But that concludes my reviews of the WWF pay-per-views for the year 2000. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you're younger and didn't watch these events, hopefully I gave you some solid recommendations to check out on Peacock. Obviously, Royal Rumble, excellent show, definitely worth a look. No Way Out, pretty damn good, worth a look, mainly for the Hell in a Cell match. WrestleMania is terrible, except for the ladder match. Skip it. Backlash is awesome. Judgment Day is awesome. King of the Ring is not good. But if you want to see Kurt Angle get one of the first big wins of his career, I guess it's worth checking out for that. Fully Loaded, I would give pay-per-view of the year to that. I think that show is stacked from top to bottom and is kind of an overlooked show. But excellent pay-per-view. And that one is definitely worth checking out. And SummerSlam is great. And then you get into the final 4 pay-per-views of the year, and it's like, yeah, they're fine. That's basically how I feel about those. So, but in any case, yeah, I think I've rambled on for long enough. I think it's time to go. So, be sure to comment down below. I always love reading comments on my videos. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the little bell icon so you get notified when I post new videos, and follow me on Twitter. The link is in the description. But that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching, and I will see you all later.